everybody's pulling their weight. Stu's been really good. Like you mentioned, Darnell Nurse. Darnell Nurse goal share over the past 5 games, 7-1.
What we should be talking about right now is the Edmonton Oilers, because they went in to a little bit of a tough stretch. They'd won 3 games in a row, famously, about a week ago, or 2 weeks ago at this point, with Petey. I declared I'd kind of settled on who I thought was the team that's going to come out of the West, who's the well-rounded, kind of impenetrable team, and I'd landed on it's actually just the Oilers. After the kind of weird start, then they go into this stretch, and we talked about Hyman scoring again. Draisaitl is just having a Leon Draisaitl season. Love that. They had the Wild on Thursday, and on that grade, you remember, what was it?
A?
It was an A.
Yeah.
Because that had some game of the year potential. Wild are the upstart, hey, look at us, here we come kind of team.
Mm-hmm.
Oilers playing really good hockey. If the Wild had won that game, and I believe, it was in Minnesota.
It was.
It was in Minnesota. Yep. But even at home, if the Wild had won that game, we would have sat up a little more straight when we talked about the Wild.
Yeah.
Take them a little more seriously. The Oilers were not doing stupid Oilers stuff. They were playing good hockey. So if the Wild won that game, we'd say, okay. And after that game, the Oilers had the Vegas Golden Knights. So this was a tough stretch.
Yeah, and that's not to say that like what the Wild have done this season is like unimpressive or like we weren't taking it seriously. They're a good team. But when you're a good team who's like arriving on the scene as like, hey, we're here now, we're joining this party, we're in the big boys club, we are a Stanley Cup contender this season. And I think that a lot of people were ready and willing to put the Wild in that conversation. Had they done it against the Oilers, and obviously it's a 1-game sample, but had they shown up against the Oilers and really made a statement, then I think they would deserve to be in that club, in that party. They got fucking worked. That was an absolute ass kicking. And again, it's not exclusive to the Wild because the Oilers are doing that against really good teams. They did it to a lesser extent against Vegas on Saturday because they kind of let Vegas
back in the game,
play around a little bit in the third period. But man, the Wild very much looked like they could not hang in that game.
Yeah, so Thursday, and to a lesser extent Saturday, which respectfully to the Wild, Vegas is better than the Wild, and Vegas has more guys, especially with Minnesota playing without Middleton. But I already took Vegas more seriously than the Wild. But what was interesting about the Wild game for me as an Oilers fan, and as like for this show, we do need to keep pretty close tabs on like where are the Oilers right now? Are they good? Because they're going to be expected to make some sort of run here, with the exception of our guy Jakob Lauko kind of tuning up Ty Emberson.
That was a great fight.
That was a great fight.
Great representation on both sides. Like Emberson landed a couple big uppercuts, but man, Lauko, that was a fucking great fight.
But with the exception,
both guys got hurt.
Yes, yeah. With the exception of that fight, the Oilers weren't like skating circles around them. But the Oilers were just easily controlling the game, easily scoring, easily winning, not embarrassing anybody, but just clearly, hockey buzzword, outclassing the Wild. Like it did not seem close in that regard.
And the air of like the way that they were doing it, they weren't even that excited about it. It was just like business as usual. They know that they're humming on all cylinders right now, and it is really, really impressive. And it's worth mentioning that the Wild not fully healthy.
Yep.
But yeah, I think that was a bit of a disappointment in terms of like I was expecting a much better game out of the Wild. Was expecting that to be a really great game. The Wild, that may have been a wake up call for them.
Our group text was active. Actually, it was you, Sean, were you in on that, or were Pete and I just hammering each other
about the Oilers?
Yeah,
probably.
It was
probably just you two.
I
don't have time to talk about hockey right now. I don't have the energy to talk about hockey.
So
Sean has never liked hockey, guys. Move off it. There's no proof Sean's a hockey fan.
So we were just talking about like how we haven't talked about the Oilers much this season. It's basically the polar opposite of the way that I feel about the Sabres, where like I didn't want to talk about the Oilers because we knew that they would re-enter the conversation at some point. They were just doing the same fucking thing that they always do. And I didn't feel the need or compelled to talk about it. And I didn't feel the need to be compelled or talk about the Buffalo Sabres because they were just doing what they always do. But now it's gotten to the point for both sides on either end of the spectrum. You're like, this is very interesting the way that this is happening.
This is like, I know you don't like the Sabres are in the news, but the Oilers and Sabres are just in the news.
Buffalo Bills are going to the Super Bowl.
And we are nothing if not newsmen. We deliver you the news. So they beat the Wild 7-1 easily. And then but anyway, so we were active in our group text. And it was just, hey, like, never mind on the Wild front. We're not throwing them away, but we're just not kind of advancing them to the next level of being taken seriously, which is fine because we had kind of felt that they were you were really good on the Canucks last year and clocked them pretty well, which is like, hey, they're arriving. It doesn't mean they've arrived. They're going to get punched around probably by the time they get to the postseason. And I tip my cap to the Wild. To the Canucks. They end up taking the conference champions to 7 games in the second round. That was a great season for them last year, but it was like they are not totally there yet. Mm-hmm. I don't think we think the Wild are totally there yet, right?
No, and they shouldn't be. They still have all the dead money on the cap. Like they have like a weight around their ankles, and they're still doing a great job. Like that's a good team. I've been forced to now become a Minnesota Wild respecter, which is not something that I saw coming. They're a good team. I don't think they're in the club yet.
So 2 days after working the Wild 7-1, they worked the Golden Knights 6-3, and I believe it was 4-0. And then I watched the whole game, but parts of it were on my phone and everything. But anyway, they always had a comfortable lead, but they win 6-3.
Skinner would give one away,
right? Despite they allowed 2 goals in under 30 seconds, and on a third period power play, Stu Skinner just did Stu God stuff and handed Brett Howden a goal. But they still win 6-3, and with the exception of a couple of weird things, they were clearly the better team against the Golden Knights. And that makes me I did an Oil Man parlay, and I just kind of threw out anything good for the Oilers could happen, and it hit.
All of it happened.
All of it happened. Hyman scored, Draisaitl scored. They went over on the goals.
And worth noting, like Vegas in the club. Vegas is in the club. They are a team that absolutely you take seriously. I think they can win the cup this year. That was you could slap around the Wild and I say good for you. Like they're not there yet. Vegas definitely there. So and they did it against both.
My posture did change over the weekend, and it was for the Oilers. And I didn't think that I'd be able to sit up a little straighter for them because, as you said, like, we know how this story works. If they're not playing well, guess what's going to happen in a little bit? They're going to win a bunch of games in a row. They're going to beat good teams, and we will all absolutely believe it.
Yeah.
But still, when they beat Vegas, when Vegas knows that they just beat the Wild, and like Vegas still probably has some statements they want to make themselves. Let's not forget, this is a team that was by some left for dead going into the season when they lost the pieces that they lost in the offseason. So as you said, they are in the club, and I take Vegas extremely seriously. So I took that game a hell of a lot more seriously than I took the Thursday game. Either way, they win both of those games. Draisaitl is absolutely on Hart watch.
Yeah,
He's tied for the league lead with Kirill Kaprizov in goals. He is tied for 5th in points, per game. I think right now I like Kaprizov more than him, but if you want to get into the like wing versus center thing or whatever, and Draisaitl, as usual, has been awesome on faceoff, so like there's reasons to maybe have a case for Draisaitl. I have a much bigger case personally for Kaprizov right now. Maybe it's the element of surprise, but
I think it's also the element of like, and you can argue whether or not this is deserving.
He's their only guy.
He's their guy.
Like he's their guy.
That matters.
So Draisaitl is on Hart watch. Oilers are awesome. Hyman is back. We'll talk about Darnell Nurse in a little bit, but something that you kind of came on to at some point last week was like, Draisaitl is playing on a line with Vasily Podkolzin and Kasperi Kapanen, and that is an NHL team's second. Those are 2 players on an NHL team's second line, and I'll let you elaborate on it, but the way you phrased it to me was this is peak. They can't keep getting away with Leon Draisaitl.
Yeah, and if you want to have like the conversation like, oh, Kirill Kaprizov is the guy for the Wild, like he's their engine, the counter argument to that would be like, look who Leon Draisaitl is playing with. And yeah, like he shares the ice with much better players a lot of the time, like on the power play and whatever, but like he can make like almost anything work. Almost anything. And he is, you said before the show, like that you've been watching the Oilers with somebody who's not very familiar, and like this season they believe that Leon's the guy. Like they were under the impression that Leon is the best player in the world. And this season, that's probably true. Like Connor's still obviously the best player in the world.
Yeah.
But this year, Leon, like the way that they change off and kind of can both spend time being the best player in the world, like it's unbelievable. And he's been crazy, and that is the biggest. You can't keep getting away with this. Like just waiver wire pickup guys, stick them with Draisaitl, and you can have the best line in the world.
Yeah. Since you outed me, my girlfriend thinks that Leon Draisaitl is
hard launch.
is the Oilers is the best player in the world, because I tell her, I'm like, she hadn't watched a lot of hockey. She watches every Oilers game now, and I was like, they've got the best player in the world. They've also got Draisaitl, and she was like, is McDavid the best player in the world? And she like knows puck so far, and I was like, that fucking rocks, because if you had never watched these two before, you would be dazzled by both, and you would absolutely think that Draisaitl's the best player in the world.
And that's like, and also like the line mates thing is a little bit unfair because like those guys are playing well. But it obviously helps playing with Draisaitl. I think it's like the bigger conversation here over the last 5 games for the Oilers is that everybody is pulling their weight. Everybody is playing well. Like haven't talked about Jeff Skinner. Jeff Skinner scored the other day.
Yes.
And I was going through some of the numbers under the hood, and literally every player on the Oilers roster that has played over the last 5 games is either winning their minutes or even in their minutes. Every single one of them is winning or like evening out in their minutes. And that's everybody's pulling their weight. Stu's been really good. Like you mentioned Darnell Nurse. Darnell Nurse goal share over the past 5 games, 7-1. Darnell Nurse. So like he was on the ice the other night for a goal against, and you said that the broadcast was like, that's the first goal that he's been on the ice in forever.
It was news that like they hard launched Darnell Nurse was on the ice for a goal against. That was shocking news to people. Yeah, and you mentioned that like everybody is winning their minutes against good teams.
Yeah.
Against the class of the West. Do you have the Lauren McDavid stuff? Okay, so this is another good tweet from Pete. The Oilers are ragdolling the league's best teams. Everyone is scoring. Lauren McDavid is making cool-ass clothes. Everything is coming up Edmonton right now. She's cooking, is Lauren McDavid.
Oh, yeah, those are great. Like, that's, you know me, like, that's very much up my alley. Very much my style. I love it. This honestly was not even like my best take of the weekend about Lauren McDavid. I texted you, Lauren McDavid is built for being a wag like Connor McDavid is built for hockey.
Oh, yeah.
She is like, fuck it. She crushes like being a wag. Like she's involved in the community, does that cool shit, like is awesome influencer, ride or die for Connor. Like, I love Lauren McDavid. Big fan.
Did you see Gene with Lauren on the broadcast?
Yeah.
That was just, it was as though he had the Queen of England.
I was going to say like big first lady energy.
Yeah.
She crushed it.
My understanding of Edmonton is she is the first lady of, she is, if not the president of Edmonton, the first lady. I could say that maybe Connor is even more the first man, because Lauren is and Connor's polished, but like Lauren is
the spokesperson.
Spokesperson, the presidential one, and Connor is you see a weird video of a stranger being kind of weird to them when they're just trying to buy beer, and you're like, leave him out of this.
Yeah, exactly.
He didn't ask for any of this. He is not a politician. He is but a lowly hockey player.
That is true. I would agree with that. But she's built. She's built for it.
Okay, so on the Wild, we say not quite ready. That's okay. The Wild played Vegas on Sunday, when Vegas was on the second game of a back-to-back. Edmonton followed by Minnesota. That's no piece of cake. And yeah, they got smoked by the Oilers, but I tip my cap to them because they held on to win. A better rested Wild team, 3-2. Bit of a crazy scramble at the end there, but it was a fun finish. And I kind of would have expected Vegas to win against the Wild, even when they were playing on a back-to-back. It just shows that they're more there. They're in the club. Minnesota isn't.
Yeah, and again, like you said, I think that's fine. I think that's okay that the Wild aren't that team yet, but there's still a lot of hockey left. Like they can figure it out down the stretch. Just right now, if we're doing taking them seriously rankings, they are a tier below, I think.
We all silly like the mayor.